everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on the Millionaire Detective Balance Unlimited, episode 9, and I'm a little nervous. The last episode was pretty crazy. I didn't have a long discussion about it because it was like, well, so Daisuke's dad's alive, somehow maybe, and is back and is involved with the Adolium. The grandma doesn't want to talk. The sister was knocked out. Takai and Cho are dead, supposedly, and Haru is rightfully confused and ticked off. So I'm like, we were talking about it in the comments, and Anime Annie brought up, she's like, Haru's a great communicator, and I'm like, well, I'm afraid there's going to be miscommunication at this point, because Haru's going to be like, what is going on? Why can't you tell me? Why can't you leave me out of things? Which brings me to some of the comments that I want to talk about before diving into this episode, because I couldn't wait. I was like, I have to know what happens. We only have 3 episodes left. What do we do? So I wanted to point out, Lancer Fate was talking about how, in their opinion, they didn't think that people were being that malicious to Haru, that they were just doing their job and, you know, not necessarily using Haru, but just incorporating him. Because, to be honest, you know, Haru has, to be fair, requested to be involved this entire series, and so now he is getting involved. The one thing, though, that stands out to me is that Daisuke, in the episode, wants to keep, or has been for the last several episodes, been wanting to keep Haru out of the entire situation, because he's like, I don't want you to get hurt, just stay out of it, it'll be fine. And while that does seem really good on the surface, and I've been praising Daisuke for being like, yeah, keep Haru out of this, don't get him involved because he could get hurt, I do think it's really interesting that in the last episode, we had Daisuke in the last episode getting mad at his grandmother because she wanted to keep him out of everything. She's like, no, stay out of it. You could get hurt. I don't want you involved. You need to stay out of it. And Daisuke got mad about that. And so based on how those two things are kind of parallel, I'm hoping that Haru brings up, you know, I want to be involved, quit trying to butt me out. And I would love to have, like, the anime, like, when a character says something that's a parallel to what the character they're saying it to is experiencing, that character suddenly has the flashback of like, oh, wait, I was exactly like you and thought the same thing you did. And then they reconcile and communicate. I'm hoping something like that happens, but I don't know. But I thought it was really interesting how Daisuke, the way he's acting to Haru is kind of how Daisuke's grandmother was acting to him. And Daisuke didn't like that. Haru doesn't like it similarly. So I thought that was a pretty good comparison. So thank you, Lancer Fate, for bringing that up. But additionally, Anime Annie was talking about how it's interesting that both Takai and Cho seem to have came to their own conclusions about things and have been actively working to get to prove that conclusion. Like Takai wanting to prove that Daisuke is involved in the murder, which is similar to Cho and their original stance until they were proven wrong. So Anime Annie points out that that's interesting because you have Takai and Cho who are sticking by their opinions and trying to prove that they were right, whereas you have Hoshino and Haru who similarly are both wanting to investigate the entire situation as a whole, get as much information as they can, Modao Zushi style, before coming to any direct conclusions. So that whole senpai and kohei relationship between the two pairs and how they think about gathering evidence and proving their points seems to be really interesting. And there's a generational gap there. So it was really cool to bring up. So I'm glad that you did that, Anime Annie. But yeah, my biggest fear is that Haru is going to miscommunicate and then go off on his own and get in trouble, and Daisuke is going to need him, and there's going to be all this, you know, it's the 3rd act. The drama last week was the rule of 8, and it definitely lived up to the rule of 8, setting the tone of just sheer confusion and suspicion with everyone moving into this final act. And we have 3 episodes left. So presumably 2 episodes to set up towards the climax and 1 episode to have the climax and wrap everything up. It's insanity. It's insanity, and what do we do? So, yeah. I'm so curious, y'all, to see what's going to happen. I hope you all are too, but we're not going to wait anymore. We're not going to wait anymore, y'all. We are going to dive right in and see what happens. So we are going to start episode 9 of the Millionaire Detective Balance Unlimited. Get my headphones in, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this, y'all. Oh, this episode was great. This episode was great. This episode was so good. And oh my God, it was so fast paced. There was so much happening. I was like, we got 2 episodes left after this. And I was like, okay. Because this episode going in, I'm like, all right, we have 3 episodes left. We have to, 1, figure out how we're going to narrow down and figure out, is this Shigemaru? Yes, it is. We have to figure out if it's Shigemaru. We have to narrow it down and be like, how are we going to find Shigemaru? How are we going to corner him? How are Daisuke and Haru going to reconcile? Which we'll talk about that. And then how is everything going to start coming together? And yeah, it's just all like everything has been suspicious up until now, but things are starting to come together, which is really, really good. So I guess I didn't want to bring White Board King out because I didn't think I would need him, but I guess first and foremost, apparently Cho and Takai are dead. That's just wild to me. I didn't think that Takai and Cho would actually die in this. I just didn't think they would really die, but they did. I'm like super sad about that. I was like, oh my God, especially with how Hoshino reacts and everything with Haru. Like, it just, apparently they're dead, and that's just so bizarre. But we'll talk about that. So they're kind of out for being suspicious. The butler is still suspicious to me. The butler is still, I feel like the butler is the inside guy making a lot of decisions and helping Shigemaru out, because he was there when he took Shigemaru to go see Sayuri. He has been there all from the start. I don't know. He's still suspicious to me, but man, we need to go through this episode as we talk, because there was a lot of stuff that was revealed and I don't want to get out of order with it. So I guess the very first thing is the opening scene with Haru and Daisuke. And the thing about it is, it kind of subverts what I thought was going to happen, because I thought Haru was going to blow up and be like, you know, we're going to take you under arrest, whatever. But Haru doesn't. Haru's trying to figure out what to do. He's like, I don't know how to handle this. If Cho, it's like, and you can't blame Haru for feeling the way he does. He's just lost both Cho and Takai, 2 of his partners, his chief. Like, he obviously feels horrible about it, but he doesn't know all the pieces of the situation. So it makes sense for him to be mad at Daisuke for saying, like, why can't you tell me these things? Don't you trust me? Don't you trust me as your partner to help you solve this case? And I feel like that's what this whole thing on the boat is going to lead to, is Haru and Daisuke coming to a mutual agreement that, yeah, we trust each other. We both can do this. It'll be okay. And then go from there. So I'm like, oh my God. It's just mind-blowing, right? It's just mind-blowing to me. I'm like, okay, so that's what we're going to do with this, right? All right. So it's so fascinating to see that Daisuke is the one that throws his badge away, which makes sense. It makes sense that Daisuke is the one to throw his badge and be like, I'm going to do this on my own. I don't want the police's involvement. They're just going to make things worse. And Daisuke at this point doesn't trust the police at all, because he's like, you guys have clearly, there's been a cover-up, or the Kanbei family has so much power that they're not going to be able to get involved anyway. So Daisuke is like, I got to do this alone. But you know Haru's not going to take that sitting down. Not a bit, no. So I feel like it's good for the plot that Haru gets taken under custody to not only talk to Hoshino and get that plot point resolved, but to bide Daisuke some time to get set up on his end. So I'm glad that the two threads have merged again by the end of this episode. What I was afraid was going to happen was Haru was going to go off and do his own thing, Daisuke was going to go off and do his own thing, and they weren't going to come together till the climax, which is essentially what's happening, but it's coming together a little bit sooner than that. So, yeah. But we'll talk about it. But yeah, Daisuke basically saying he's going to turn in his badge and no longer be involved, right? So, the little flower on Cho's desk is so freaking sad. Now, Kiyomizu, I've been suspicious of him this entire time. My suspicions have waned a lot because he seems like he helps the others track Shigemaru. So my suspicions of him have waned a lot. I'm like, okay, if he didn't want them to go track Shigemaru and he wanted to keep them there, then he would just be like, oh guys, there's nothing we can do. We just have to kind of just go along with it. He's still kind of suspicious and weird as a character because he's like a freaking if he's a freaking red herring, they did a really good job, because I was very suspicious of him the entire time because I was like, come on, what's the deal? But it seems like he's okay. So I'm like, all right, show, you did a really good job making him a red herring, because he was suspicious as hell up until this episode, and then suddenly he's like, oh, but maybe that's part of his character. Maybe part of his character is that you can't read him, so you don't know what side he's really on, and he's used that to his advantage all these years, and now here he is, right? Making a new boat and cleaning up his equipment, right? And so I like the way his face drops whenever Haru says he's no longer a police officer. He's like, so how are we going to go after the perpetrator? And then the dice being a wiretap is such a good twist. I did not see that coming. I was like, oh my God. Because I was like, well, why would he only have one dice in the bag? Where'd the other dice go? And I'm like, maybe he kept it with him and maybe he's still alive. Sadly, no. But it all makes sense now. I still don't know how Takai died. How Takai couldn't like double team him while he was stabbing Cho. I don't know why that didn't happen. I don't know how that works. Maybe we'll find out. If Takai is still alive. But they apparently they got both the bodies, so he can't be, right? I want to see what was that close up on there. He says that's why Cho didn't run when the guy showed up. Okay, so yeah, you see Takai has like, it looks like a stick or something, and he had his handcuffs, and he had the knife there. So see, he went to go wrap. Oh, okay. So we see that he had his tie to go try to tie up Kanbei's hands. So we see the knife slash. It slashed Takai's back at his spine, and then went to stab Cho. Okay. So that's possibly why it didn't work. But Cho had to literally embrace Kanbei to put the dice under his jacket collar. And he just got lucky they didn't change his jacket. Good for him. Good for him, man. He put it under there and then got stabbed. So regardless of how Kanbei acted, Cho's mind was already made up. So yeah, just mind that Cho sacrificed himself so they could get the listening device on him. I am still amazed that Shigemaru did not change his jacket after having all this blood and stuff around him. Like, really? He didn't? Okay. That feels like it could be a plot hole because you think he would have changed jackets at some point, but I'll forgive it. At this point, what can we do, right? Yeah, it could be a plot hole, but at this point, I'm like, if it works, it works. I'll take it. And maybe the dice fell out in the car or something that he was driving. Maybe he just put his jacket in the back of the car and that's what the others used to track him with it. We don't know. It doesn't seem like Shikamaru has access to the same resources as far as like clothes and things like that Daisuke does. So maybe even if he threw the jacket with the dice in the back seat of his car, that still could be used as a tracking device, as a wiretap. Okay? So, but yeah, that twist was amazing. I loved that. I thought that was great. And then everybody comes in to take Kato into custody for being a witness at the murder scene, which is so, I mean, it does make sense, but I'm like, you guys know that Kato did not do this. So it's just, And then they took the keys to the car, so everybody's stuck there. I want to say that I love not only that the modern crimes director Kiyomizu hid behind Sakai, but that she had the fire extinguisher. Like, she was ready to go. Like, girl was ready. So then we have them looking at the footage, and Suzui's like, I saw him with my own eyes. I'm amazed that it's him. I'm amazed he's been alive this whole time. I honestly thought it was an illusion, thought it was somebody else, thought it was Hitoshi, the butler, Hadashi, or whatever his name is, that was being as him. But I understand also why Daisuke is mad at his grandmother, because he's like, you mean to tell me that this guy that killed my mother you've been shielding all these years? And she's like, well, he's my child. I have to protect my child. And Daisuke's like, so then you know why I'm mad as a child of that parent that killed my other parent. You get why I'm mad, right? I hate that. I hate that it's put like a big wedge in their relationship, that she's upset because of her son's actions, but it's her son, so she has to protect him. But then Daisuke's mad because he's like, you've protected him all these years, and you know how I feel about him in this whole situation. So it's really sad. And the butler comforting her, I'm like, I still feel like the butler's involved in all this and has a place in all of this. I'm not convinced that we're not out of the woodwork with him yet, but but what can we do? Like, I feel bad. You can tell the grandmother's really heartbroken, but Daisuke is just like, come on. He's like, I'm going to face him. Like, what choice do I have at this point? And so, obviously, Suzui is totally right that it's all a trap. She's just like, hello, this guy's trying to trap you. Now, why he wants Daisuke alive? I mean, Daisuke is the heir to the family. So maybe that's it. It's his son. But who knows? Maybe Shigemaru's like, I didn't kill your mom. It was somebody else. And he just, he had to leave because the cops weren't going to believe him. He had picked up the knife. So, I mean, maybe that's part of it. Now, what he's doing with the Adolium as far as being nefarious, the guy he's working with seems pretty damn nefarious. So, unless the guy he's working with is somebody he's trying to get, caught in the act, I don't know. I mean, Shigemaru killed Sho and Takai, so what do we make of this? Like, on the one hand, I'm kind of torn because I see Shigemaru as being the villain of this series, that he did kill his mom, and that he did kill Sho and Takai, and that this is a thing. But then on the other hand, I don't know. We don't have the full story about Shigemaru. I want to know more, and I have a feeling Daisuke is going to confront him in the next episode, and we'll find out what the deal is. Maybe we'll find out. I don't know. But I appreciate Suzui being like, hey, this is a trap. What do we do? Also, the Modern Crimes Division being so resourceful. I freaking love them. I love that they're like, hey, we gotta go get lunch. Oh, there's a kebab truck. Oh, yes, the kebab truck. Every time. I love that that's their secret way of trying to figure out to link where the source of the wiretap is. I love that the three of them go do it. I love that the Modern Crimes director, he distracts the guy with the ship. At that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe he's fine. He's not suspicious because he's letting them go and check the wiretap. Maybe that's the whole situation. It was just super cute. I love that she actually did get the kebab. She was like, just with her little gyro there as they're tracing it. And then poor Kamei with the whole antenna trying to get it and everybody stopping and looking at him. Freaking hilarious. I mean, if the First Division were to like go outside at this moment and see that, they totally would have been caught, but that was so cute and funny. I absolutely loved it. I thought that was hilarious. And then the little girl being like, what is it, mommy? And she's like, don't look. Poor Kamei getting his workout on, right? So, okay. The whole thing with Hoshino and Haru was absolutely awesome. I loved that because Hoshino's kind of been this torn character, right? Hoshino respected Takai. It was, he looked up to him, and he had this assumption that Haru was mad at Takai this whole time for like making him stay in the division when he didn't want to. But what I love about Haru's character is so genuine, and we go back. I just love the expressions of what they drew Hoshino's face. Like, how they drew Hoshino this entire episode was beautiful. Like, they just show his sincere face, like him interrogating Haru. Haru's pissed off this whole time because he just wants to leave and go track down Shigemaru. But Hoshino's so well animated, and you can just see, like, the pain. Like, he's having to interrogate, like, his best friend. And he's just like, I don't want to do this, but I got to do this. And yeah, did you have beef with Takai? I got to know. Like, it's almost personal and business together in that moment. And then we go back and get the full story that, yes, the girl was an accomplice. And the thing about it was that, Haru regretted it later because he's like, oh my God, I killed this girl or critically injured her. And that wasn't part of what I was supposed to do. And, like, it really affected him. And we don't know if this was the first time he had to take somebody down in the line of work. I'm guessing it was. And it just didn't go well because that just wasn't Haru's thing. It's not his nature. And Takai was like, it's okay. You did your job. But you can tell Haru's like, this isn't what I signed up for as a detective, and I'm not a hero. So he feels really conflicted and awful about it, and that's when he decides to leave. He can't do anything on the shooting course, on the shooting range. And we see the douchey guy from the First Division along with Hoshino, and then he leaves. And Hoshino says, if you run away, you'll no longer be a detective nor a hero. And Haru's like, I don't want to be a hero, and this isn't me being a detective anymore. And it's so sad and sweet. But the thing of it is when Haru's like, he's like, I'm still a detective because of Takai. He's like, I don't have any resentment towards him. He's like, he let me go. I still respect him. He still let me have a job with Modern Crimes. I'm like, he could have fired me, but that's not what happened. He let me move. He's like, so I don't have any regrets about that. And I love the way they drew Hoshino. Hoshino's face looked like a little baby deer as he was saying that. He was just like blinking, like, what? You mean you don't have any, resentment towards him? You're okay? And Haru's just like, I just want to find out who murdered him and bring them to justice. So that is going to be the big question. The big question is Shigemaru going to reveal something? Because now we have Daisuke wanting to bring his dad to justice for killing his mom. We have Haru wanting to bring him to justice for killing Takai and Cho. So are we going to find out something in the next episode that's going to make Daisuke have issues or hesitation with killing Shigemaru, bringing him to justice, being like, oh, maybe he didn't really kill his mom, maybe there's something else to the story, but that's not going to change the fact of how Haru feels about Takai and Cho. So I feel like there could be some conflict happen there, but we don't know. We just don't know, right? We just don't know. A golden key can open any door. I love that that's the name of this episode, being like, and the golden key can refer to many things. It can refer to the key left behind by Cho. It can refer to Haru's sincerity and his honesty. It can refer to the tenacity of the modern crimes. It can refer to Daisuke going after Shigemaru. Like, there's lots of ways it can be referred. So yeah, something I love about this episode is that they all three, every thread, every plot line converges at the same point. The Modern Crimes Division figures out that they're at the wharf. Daisuke figures out that they're at the wharf through the game we'll talk about. And then Haru. Somehow, Hoshino and them figure out something. So I felt for Hoshino when he walks in and he sees the ghost of Takai saying, here, have a seat. And he's by himself. And he just feels really sad. And the one guy's like, we have quite a mess on our hands. The Prime Minister's office is interfering and telling us not to touch the Kanbei family. So yeah, there's like powerful connections there. They can only do so much. And Hoshino's like, all we can do is what the higher-ups tell us to do. And that's when the douche comes in. And he brings the letter. And he says, this was in Takai's desk. It was a letter of resignation. And then we open up the letter of resignation. And it says Haru Kato. So was it Haru's letter of resignation? Was it that was in his desk? And that's where he went? So I feel like it was Haru's letter of resignation that Takai had in his desk. And then he got him to go to Modern Crime. So that part is a little bit confusing of what the letter means, because the episode doesn't really give us anything after that to go off of. So maybe by next episode we'll figure out what it means, if anything else beyond that. If the letter, I want to know why it convinced Hoshino to help him. Like, he ran back to help him. So I want to figure out what was the deal. Was that Haru's letter of resignation that has been in Takai's desk this entire time? Or was it Takai's letter of resignation and he talks about Haru, or is like promoting Haru, or what's the deal? What is the deal? What's happening? Did he make Haru the higher up and that's why Hoshino lets him out to go find Shigemaru? What do we do with this? Because as soon as he sees it, he's like, oh, and he says, I'll never accept this. Oh, the fact that I'm somehow still a detective to this day is thanks to Takai. So, yeah, Takai wouldn't accept it. He wouldn't accept the letter of resignation from him and kept him a detective. I'm thinking that's what it means, right? That Takai trusted him, and so that's why Hoshino chooses to trust him. And then he goes to find him. Okay, so Daisuke gets in the car, which again, I'm totally with Suzui. It was a trap. There was nothing in the letter. He luckily has the sense to put the mask on, that it was a nerve agent. They're trying to abduct him. Again, why not? So yeah, they find out that this guy's 37. He's Franz Weinski, which sounds lovely. And then he's the personal bodyguard of Thomas Matheson, an international arms dealer. So he's just a bodyguard. He's just a bodyguard hired to protect Shigemaru. But he's the personal bodyguard of it. He's just a hired gun, basically. He's just a hired bodyguard. But he deals with some other interesting, colorful people. And so they're like, we're going to follow his trail. And then I love that, again, all the things converge. And they tell Haru to go to the wharf. And they're diving. And then meanwhile, We have the grab your camera and do a spin and get 100,000 yen. And then everybody's doing it, and that's allowing the camera to see and trace Shikamaru. It's genius. I'm like, if you got all the money to spend, why not do it? So, oh, that's so brilliant. I love it. I love the way they do that. And then they go to the wharf. So there's something in the wharf, right? They have this big ship from Panama that's leaving, which I'm sure has Adolium on it. It has a big GRK on the side of it. I don't know if that's just the ship line meter, but there's like armed military there, so that's not good. Haru's like, this is not, they're armed. This does not bode well, especially when you're Haru, who does not want to shoot a gun. I like that while they're hiding behind the different Conex boxes, that the Sakai is like sitting there eating, like she's like stress eating with all of them being like, what do we do? Right? The ship is registered to Panama, so it's he's like, it's a foreign ship. We would need a passport to get aboard. And it's like, I like the Haru's like, quit giving me trivia. Tell me what we can do. What can we do here? And then, yeah, Kamai's like, can't we just take photos and come back later? But then the ship is leaving. It's leaving port. And that's about the time that Daisuke shows up. What I love is that for the second time in this series, Hoshino has showed up, like the ex, to tell Daisuke about what his current boyfriend is doing. And I'm like, I'm living for it. I don't ship Hoshino and Haru at all, but I do love the friendship that Hoshino and Haru have. I love the friendship they share. I love Hoshino's support for him. And I love that Hoshino tries to give Daisuke some information about Haru before he leaves. And he's like, Shikamaru Kanbei is aboard the ship, and so is Kato. And there's a moment, okay? There's a moment. Daisuke does not show his emotions very often, but the moment, I just saw it as I'm watching this episode, the moment that Hoshino says, so is Kato, Daisuke's like, what? What do you mean he's aboard the ship? Like, there's a little moment where he, like, has, like, a reaction to that. Like, it's so tiny. It's the barest little thing, that tiny little reaction where he's like, what do you mean he's aboard the ship? And then he instantly goes back to normal. And he's like, Kato. And he's like, yeah, 2 years ago, he no longer became able to shoot a gun and stopped being a hero. And then said that now, for the first time, but ever since you came along, it seems like he wanted to become a hero again. And then, of course, Daisuke's not paying attention. He's just like, oh, that's interesting to know. Thank you for telling me this motivation. I'm glad I'm helping him get back to his former glory. Now, bye. But the thing about it is, we've seen Haru be a hero without firing a gun. We saw him talk down, him and Daisuke talk down the man on the train with the middle-aged idol fans. So we've seen him be a hero without having to shoot a gun and hurt somebody. And although I think it would have, here's my thing. I think that on the one hand, yes, getting the Weinski guy out of the way is probably a good idea because he seems a little bit unhinged. I don't blame Haru for not being able to shoot, because you don't just get over PTSD. You don't just get over trauma like that, like it's nothing. That doesn't happen. So him still having the hesitation is totally in character and very realistic. So the question is, if he can't fire a gun at him, what do we do? Now, do I think that by the end of this series he's going to fire a gun? Maybe. The question is Haru going to fire at Shikamaru or Weinski to save Daisuke? I think if he's going to fire the gun, it's going to be to save Daisuke, but I don't know what that will entail. I don't know. They're on this ship now. There's no communication to the outside world. The phones are off. The communication's gone. Daisuke doesn't have access to his money. That's the problem. And they've used the Adolium to limit any type of surveillance, so they can't locate where they're at. So it's literally the two of them against a ship full of men. That's a tall and heavy order. And I don't know how our boys are going to be able to handle it. So yeah, that seems problematic. Because yeah, and I like that Hoshino is just like, oh my gosh, geez. Like, he's just like, if anybody could go and save Haru, it's Daisuke. But I don't know. I feel like it's going to be the other way around. I'm a little bit worried. And apparently Shikamaru does not want anybody knowing about this. And they don't want him killed. Which I'm like, dude just nearly fired this, like, antimantium beam at him, right? It seems like it's a problem. And yeah, then everything shut online and Suzuki Suzui doesn't have access. I feel for Haru though, like the moment he can't fire the gun and the look on Haru's face where he's like, I still can't do it. And it's just, it's so sad. I'm like, Haru, my dude, what do we do? What do we do? And then Daisuke is up against him, so I'm like, what is Shigemaru's goal? Why does he want Daisuke alive? What's the deal with the Adolium? What is it being used for? It seems like it would be nefarious, but we don't know. What is Haru gonna do? Like, Haru and him are on that ship against an entire bunch of guys that are armed. We have 2 episodes left. So, there was some cost at the end of the episode we might as well talk about. The spin around, the prize money given out was only 10 million. So I was like, oh, okay, 100,000. So I'm like, only 100 people did it. I'm like, really? That's crazy. Or maybe 1,000 did it. 1,000 times 100,000. I'm like, what is, I feel bad. I'm not a math major. So how many people did that? We're going to do the math real quick. If it was $100,000, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 10 million divided by 100,000. So 100 people did it. Only 100 people got the prize money. That's insane. I mean, good for them. Good for those 100 people. But the advertising expenses for it were $110 billion. What? So for the advertising. And then the active support veil is $160 billion, which makes sense if you can have a veil like that. And then the amphibious specification modification cost on his car was $200 million. Okay. So $280 billion used in this one episode on 4 things. Which next episode the cost should be 0 because they have no money to use. So the total sum should be $0 next episode, right? Unless Suzui just like goes ham and decides to just go after him by all means necessary. I don't know, y'all. I don't know how we're gonna do this. I don't know how we're gonna handle the next episode. I don't know. I'm really excited though to find out that this episode, while I'm insanely nervous for Daisuke and Haru on the ship, I'm also really excited because this episode, it covered a lot of threads, it tied a lot of things together, but I don't know what to think, y'all. I'm a bit nervous. So, but we'll find out, right? So, but yeah, in the meantime, I hope you liked this episode and this discussion. I can't wait to hear your comments down below. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more The Millionaire Detective Balance Unlimited. Bye!